If you've ever been in one of my Twitch streams or followed my Twitter, you've probably at one point or another heard me make a Cthulhu joke, make a Cthulhu reference. Sometimes I like to say, oh my Cthulhu, or praise Cthulhu, blah, 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 because I'm kind of a Lovecraft nerd and I don't really hide it. I play the Arkham Horror board game. I've got like the Cthulhu version of Flux, the card game. I've got the like special edition Cthulhu Pop. I have a Cthulhu shirt for my son. I follow a Cthulhu political account on Twitter that's like a parody. I like the Cthulhu mythos a lot. And when I was given the opportunity to potentially review an RPG set in the Cthulhu mythos, I naturally pounced on it. So I was given a copy of Stygian, Reign of the Old Ones, and this is going to be a mini review of that game. So if you're not familiar, Stygian Reign of the Old Ones is a game that was developed by Cultic Games. It started as a Kickstarter project, and it's an RPG that's set in the Cthulhu mythos. It's still in the city of Arkham, and the general story is essentially that the city has been kind of whisked away into another dimension, like the entire city of Arkham, and now things are breaking down. These people, these survivors, are kind of living in a distraught world as a result of this supernatural phenomenon, and you're trying to, depending on your character, find out more about your past because you meet this guy called the Dismal Man and you're trying to escape. And I don't want to ruin too much, but it's a pretty cool setup, and it feels like a tabletop RPG. So I'm going to start talking about the pros, in my opinion. The setup of this game really feels like a tabletop RPG. If I had to describe it, it's like a single-player tabletop RPG. Your character, when you're going through and you're building it, you select traits and stats, and you get to choose your background, and depending on the background you choose, you'll get different story options throughout the game. I, for example, in my first playthrough, decided to be a member of an occult secret society, and then on the second playthrough, I wanted to be combat heavy, so I played a soldier. And you also get to choose belief systems, and that will also open up new combat options in some cases, or more importantly, dialogue options, because there's an awful lot of dialogue. If you read Lovecraft books, you're going to understand that there's going to be a lot of dialogue, and that's important. And that's also one of the things that I personally liked about it, because it does feel very like investigation heavy, but I'll talk about that a little bit more in a moment. So, you go through, you pick your stats, your skills, your perks. Again, if you play tabletop RPGs, it's going to feel very familiar. It reminds me a lot of Fallout 2, actually. When I was playing through, I kept saying, like, this reminds me of something that I played in my youth, and I couldn't put my finger on it. And it finally clicked. It really reminded me of when I would play Fallout 2 on PC at a friend's house, and it kind of has that same feel. Obviously, it's a different universe and setup, but it just the dialogue and the playthrough and the missions and navigation kind of reminded me a lot of that. And I will say that the chosen graphics will probably not appeal to a lot of people. If you are a diehard Cthulhu / Lovecraft fan like I am, I actually kind of enjoyed the look. So the graphics are like a 2D hand-drawn game, essentially, right? Think of it as almost like it's animated. Everything looks hand-drawn. I felt like that really helped to give it an almost antique feel. It really made it feel to me like I was playing an RPG that was maybe developed in the time period that it was set in, right? It gives you that early 1900s feel. But I also know that, there are some folks who will not find it aesthetically pleasing, and that's fine, but I do want to offer that caveat, right? And as I'm talking, you're going to be seeing gameplay clips and so forth on the screen anyway, so you'll know what I'm talking about. But I personally, I didn't mind it. So I felt like it really gives it a quality Lovecraft feel throughout, because as I said before, the game really has an emphasis on investigation and kind of like psychological exploration. There are dream sequences, and there's occult activities you study. You either study at times or you stumble upon them. You stumble upon somebody who's like summoning a demon at one point. There's a murder. there's a guy running around stabbing people, and there are otherworldly characters that you meet, or creatures you run into, and distraught people that are looking for their loved ones, or soldiers that you maybe find out are zombies. I'm trying to only talk about stuff you encounter very early in the game because I don't want to give any spoilers. So there's just, again, a lot that you'll uncover, right? There's a lot of dialogue. Another thing that I personally enjoy, but again, this is something that may make this game not for you, and I want to be upfront, is that there is some clunkiness to the combat. Now, I personally enjoyed it because when I think of Lovecraft, I don't think of like a combat-centric RPG. I'm not thinking like D&D, for example. I don't think of a Lovecraft universe RPG as being the same or playing the same as like a Dungeons and Dragons, right? I don't expect to have a sword and a shield and go and hack down, the old ones. That's not the way the Lovecraft universe works, right? You're supposed to feel, like madness is caving in on you, and this like overwhelming sense of despair. And so in my mind, like combat kind of should be annoying and clunky and the sort of thing you avoid, because in an actual Cthulhu / like Arkham setting, that would be the case, right? So combat is a little bit clunky. I will also say I experienced a couple of crashes early on. It's been a while since I've had them, but when I very first started playing, I had a couple of crashes during combat where I had to like restart the combat sequence. But I like that this game didn't make you go combat centric. You can, I think, probably play through this without having any sort of combat at all. There's a few times where, some things jumped on me, but there is a stealth mechanic. There's a lot of dialogue options. Even when you're interacting with like members of the mob, for example, you can sometimes talk your way out of it. Like there's a speechcraft. There are charisma traits, things like that. So if you're really into the role-playing aspect, and I want to put the emphasis there because this is, to beat that horse to death, right? This is really like a true role-playing game, not the RPG Final Fantasy game where it's still a combat system in disguise or whatever. Like this is true role-playing. So if that's what you're into and you want to do that, and you want to maybe try to play through a game where you don't have combat, or if you just still want to go combat heavy, you can. Like the mechanics are there, but they give you that option. They give you that choice. So I will also say at times combat feels very dangerous, especially early on in the game, where you'll run into a couple of encounters, maybe even by accident, and you're going to say, whoa, too much to handle, right? Too hot for me, and you'll actually run away, you'll flee. And there's mechanics for that as well, where you are, maybe losing your sanity, or you'll need to rest, you'll have to stock up on rations, and things like that. And so, again, these are things that some people may find annoying, but others, if you are really into, that kind of almost like survival, or at least surviving the madness and the despair of something as horrific as this, you'll feel right at home. So that's like my overview. I don't want to give up too much, because if you do decide to play, I want to keep the spoilers, mostly away, right? So I guess that's where I'll decide to end this. I'll say that it is currently $29.99 on Steam. If you are a die-hard Lovecraft fan, you can check it out. If you are not somebody who's like really into Lovecraft, or if you're not somebody who is really into like tabletop RPGs, I would consider trying a demo. At times on Steam, they will offer a free demo, so you can check it out that way and then decide if you want to buy. And yeah, I really enjoy it, but again, like I'm Captain Cthulhu, right? So I'm fully going to put my bias out there and say I am aware, when I objectively look at this, I'm aware that this game will not necessarily be for everybody, but I was really excited to check it out because I'm a Cthulhu nerd. So I wanted to share it with you guys. And if you also love Lovecraft or Cthulhu or whatever, then I would recommend checking it out. Like I said, if you're unsure, check it out on Steam, because most of the time there's like a free demo where you can go through the motions, see if it's right for you. And that's it for Stygian Reign of the Old Ones. Now, I will also say, if you have more questions about the game, you can hit me up on Twitter or whatever. I'm more than happy to talk about it if you want some more details or things like that. So do not hesitate to reach out. I also have my Discord. I always put the link to my Discord server in the video descriptions. And so if you want to pop in and say, hey, what do you think about this? Or if you are playing the game and you're struggling at a certain spot or whatever, you can hit me up that way as well. So anyway, that's it for this video. If you made it this far, I appreciate you listening to the rantings and ravings of a madman, because that's on theme for the Cthulhu mythos and or Lovecraft stories. But I love my Lovecraft stuff. I love my Cthulhu, and I wanted an excuse to talk about it. So anyway, if you made it this far, I appreciate you. Thanks for watching. Hopefully you will consider subscribing, and I hope to see you viewing more videos in the future.